the most dangerous and violent sports played in European villages in the Middle Ages. Tonight, we are going to talk about games, not gentle games, not chess beside a warm fire, not dice quietly passed across a tavern table, not children rolling hoops in a lane, not a nobleman's elegant falconry, where the violence is mostly handled by the bird. Tonight, we are going to talk about the rough games, the loud games, the dangerous games, the games that sent men limping home through mud with blood in their hair, teeth loosened, ribs bruised, shirts torn, and one shoe missing somewhere in a ditch. We are going to talk about the most dangerous and violent sports played in European villages in the Middle Ages. Though, at the time, many of these were not called sports in the clean modern sense. They were games, customs, feast day entertainments, ritual contests, youthful disorder, parish pride, holiday violence with a ball, or, from the point of view of local officials, one more reason to sigh heavily and threaten imprisonment. There were no referees in striped shirts, no whistles, no painted lines on a neat field, no carefully measured pitch, no medical tent, no concussion protocol, no orange slices at halftime. There was a ball, perhaps, or a stick, or a stone, or a rooster, or a wrestling grip, or a village full of young men who had eaten enough, drunk enough, prayed enough, worked enough, and now wanted to hurl themselves into one another for reasons both social and mysterious. This is a history of play, but also of bodies, bodies running, bodies falling, bodies pushing through crowds, bodies swinging sticks, bodies throwing stones, bodies crashing into doors, fences, hedges, carts, and other bodies. Bodies in church the next morning with a swollen eye and an explanation that convinced nobody. We begin with the most famous chaos of all, the old village football games. Not football as we know it, not association football, not rugby, not anything with neat substitutions, televised replays, or a man in expensive shoes pretending he did not foul anyone. This was mob football, folk football, shrove-tide football, a rough ball game played in towns and villages, often around the days before Lent, when people were already inclined toward feasting, drinking, and one final burst of disorder before the long season of fasting. The rules could be very simple. There is a ball. There are two sides. Move the ball to a place. That place may be a goal, or a church door, or a boundary, or a millstone, or the other end of town, or some deeply inconvenient landmark chosen by tradition, because tradition rarely cares about safety. The teams could be based on parish, district, side of a river, married men against unmarried men, upper town against lower town, or some other local division that everyone understood and nobody needed written down. The game might begin in a marketplace, or near a church, or in a field, or at a boundary between communities. Then it spread. That is the important part. It spread through lanes, over fields, across streams, into hedges, through yards, along roads, and sometimes straight into the ordinary property of people who had made the mistake of living where tradition intended to happen. Imagine a village on Shrove Tuesday. The church bell has rung. Work is not proceeding normally. People gather. Men arrive from nearby lanes, farms, cottages, workshops, and alehouses. Some are young. Some are no longer young, but still foolish. Some have played before. Some have sworn never to play again, and are, of course, standing very near the front. Women watch. Children watch. Old men criticize. A few householders quietly reinforce shutters. Somebody brings the ball. The ball may be made from an inflated animal bladder, perhaps covered with leather. Or it may be a heavier leather ball. In some traditions, it may be stuffed. In others, it may be more like a round object that has survived years of abuse and smells faintly of damp history. The ball is not decorative. It is a provocation. Everyone knows what will happen when it is released. Noise, pushing, running, shouting, gripping, falling, mud. The ball goes up. 100 bodies move. Now the game exists. There is no elegant opening play, no careful formation. Only a heaving crowd. A man grabs the ball. 3 men grab him. Someone pulls his belt. Someone slips. Someone laughs and is immediately struck in the mouth by another man's shoulder. A boy climbs onto a fence to see better. The fence breaks. The boy falls. The ball vanishes under feet. For a while, no one knows where it is, but everyone continues struggling because stopping would suggest weakness. Then the ball appears at the edge of the crowd. A runner breaks loose. For 5 glorious seconds, he believes himself chosen by destiny. Then a farmhand from the other side hits him at the waist, and both disappear into a puddle. This is not sport as polished competition. This is sport as licensed uproar. The village allows itself to become a body. A large, muddy, unreasonable body. The authorities did not always approve. In London, as early as the 14th century, official complaints mention the uproar caused by large footballs and the evils that might arise from such public disorder. Towns and kings repeatedly tried to ban football and related rough games. The concern was not only injury. It was noise, damage, disorder, blocked streets, fighting, and the possibility that young men were wasting time on games instead of practicing more useful military skills. Archery, for example. A king who wants trained archers does not love the sight of healthy young men spending their holiday wrestling over a pig's bladder in an alley. The young men, on the other hand, may feel differently. Because mob football gave something archery practice did not. It gave release. It gave rivalry. It gave a chance to shove the miller into a ditch without calling it assault. It gave a parish the chance to prove it was stronger than the next parish. It gave unmarried men the chance to impress people or damage themselves attempting to. It gave married men the chance to prove they were not yet old, usually by proving the opposite. It gave the entire community a story. Who carried the ball? Who fell into the stream? Who punched whom? Who tore his tunic? Who lost a tooth? Who hid afterward because he had broken the baker's shutter? A village needs stories. Mob football supplied them generously. Now let us follow the game down the lane. The ball has moved toward the lower fields. The crowd surges after it. A cart is in the way. No one moves the cart. They move through the cart. One wheel is damaged. The owner begins shouting, but there is no one available to hear him properly. A small dog barks at the whole event and is deeply satisfied with its own contribution. The ball crosses a ditch. Some men jump. Some fall. One man lands badly and twists an ankle. He tries to stand. He cannot. He says several things unsuitable for a church calendar. Two friends drag him aside. He insists he can continue. He cannot. This is the medical service of the game. Two friends, one insult, and a patch of grass. The ball has already moved on. The injured man sits with one shoe full of water and decides, privately, that the game has become too violent since his youth, though he himself was probably worse. Now the ball reaches the stream. Here the game becomes almost theological. Will they go around? No, they will go through. The first men plunge into the water. The stream is cold. Mud rises. The ball floats briefly, then is shoved downward by bodies. Someone loses his footing. Someone else grabs him by the hood, which saves him and nearly strangles him. People on the bank shout advice. Advice is useless. The ball emerges on the other side. So do the men, soaked, triumphant, half frozen, and still pushing. If a modern person were to ask why this is necessary, the answer would be simple. It is not. That is why it is a game. Now let us pause here and look at the deeper structure. These games were violent, but not random. They often followed custom. They happened at particular times. They involved particular communities. They had understood goals, even if the method was chaos. They allowed a dangerous amount of physical aggression, but not necessarily murder. That may sound like a low bar, but in a game with hundreds of players and almost no modern rules, it is an important bar. This was controlled disorder. Not perfectly controlled, not always safely controlled, but socially contained enough to happen again. That is the strange thing. If a game truly destroyed the village every year, it would not survive. It damaged enough to worry authorities. It delighted enough to return. Now let us cross the channel to France. There we meet La Sole, or Chul, a rough ball game known in parts of northern France, especially Normandy and Picardy, with roots reaching into the Middle Ages. Like the old football games of England, it could be played between villages, parishes, or groups within a community. The object was to carry, kick, throw, or fight the ball to a chosen place. Sometimes the ball was leather, sometimes stuffed, sometimes wooden, sometimes played with hands, sometimes with feet, sometimes with sticks. And once sticks enter a game, the argument that this is harmless recreation becomes harder to maintain. La Sole could range across fields, roads, woods, ditches, and water. The playing area might be enormous. The goal might be a church porch, a village boundary, a hearth, a pond, or some local place selected by custom. Again, the game is partly sport, partly ritual geography. It makes people move through the landscape. It turns roads, fields, hedges, and streams into a temporary arena. It reminds one village where another village begins. It lets rivalry become physical. Imagine two French villages on a cold feast day. The ball is brought out. Men gather at the boundary between communities. They know one another by sight, reputation, and insult. Some are related by marriage. Some owe one another money. Some have quarreled over grazing rights. Some simply do not like the look of each other. This is already not a calming start. The ball is released. The sides collide. The first few moments are less a game than a collective decision to forget restraint. A man with the ball tries to break away. Another grabs his cloak. The cloak tears. The owner objects. The objector is knocked sideways into a hedge. Someone swings a stick at the ball and finds a shin. The shin's owner responds with language that will need confession. The ball rolls under a cart. Half the players go after it. The cart suffers. So does the person under the cart. No one writes a sports report. But if they did, it would mostly be about mud and poor judgment. La Sole was dangerous because it permitted bodies to do what daily life usually restrained. Villagers lived with rules, church rules, manor rules, guild rules, family rules, seasonal labor rules. Do not let the pigs into the grain. Do not cut that wood. Do not fish there. Do not insult that man in court. Do not break your neighbor's fence. Then, on certain days, a ball appears and everyone runs through the fence. This is why authorities worried. The game did not merely injure people. It inverted order. For a few hours, the landscape belonged not to owners, officials, or cautious householders, but to the crowd. The ball gave permission, or seemed to, and any custom that gives young men permission to charge through fields with sticks has a way of being reconsidered by local government. Now, let us move to Ireland. Here we must speak of hurling and related stick and ball games. Hurling has deep roots in Irish tradition, with early references in Irish law and legend. Modern hurling is a fast and highly skilled sport, but earlier forms could be rough, local, and dangerous. A ball, a stick, speed, bodies, pride, and parish rivalry make an old recipe for bruises. A hurling stick is not a delicate object. It is a shaped piece of wood. In skilled hands, it moves a ball with astonishing speed. In unskilled or angry hands, it moves teeth. Early Irish references suggest organized ball play with fields, boundaries, and defended areas. This is not merely boys wandering around with a stick. It implies recognizable play, space, contest, and rules of some kind. But rules do not remove danger. They merely shape it. Imagine a village green or field. Players gather with curved sticks. The ball is small and hard enough to matter. The ground is uneven. There are no helmets in the modern sense. No padded gloves. No mouth guards. No referee with instant replay. The ball is struck. It flies low. A man swings. Another ducks too late. The stick catches his shoulder. He yells. Play continues. The ball moves toward the boundary. Players race after it. Two arrive together. There is a collision. A third player swings through the confusion. He may have aimed at the ball. Everyone will later agree that he aimed at the ball. The injured man will disagree with his remaining teeth. Hurling-like games were dangerous not because people lacked skill, but because skill and danger often live together. A fast game with sticks is thrilling precisely because it approaches harm. The same is true of many old sports. The excitement comes from the body being very near disaster and surviving by practice, speed, and luck. The Irish village game also carried social weight. Teams could represent local groups. A victory was not abstract. It belonged to a place. A player's courage and ability could become reputation. A young man who played well was noticed. A man who flinched was also noticed. Communities remember both. In small societies, sport is not separate from identity. It is a public test, not as deadly as battle, not as formal as court, but very visible. Now, let us consider wrestling. Wrestling may be one of the oldest village sports in Europe. Simple to understand, hard to master. No ball needed, no expensive equipment. Only two bodies, an open patch of ground, and enough witnesses to make backing out impossible. Wrestling appears in many cultures across Europe. In village life, it could be part of fairs, weddings, feast days, market gatherings, or seasonal celebrations. It was both sport and social display. Strength mattered, technique mattered, balance mattered. Pride mattered far too much. The rules varied. A throw, a hold, a fall, a grip on belt or jacket, local styles, local customs, local grudges. Wrestling is dangerous in a quiet way. It does not look as chaotic as mob football, but one bad throw can break a collarbone, dislocate a shoulder, crack ribs, twist a knee, or leave a man seeing stars while insisting he is fine. Imagine a fair day. The stalls are set. There is ale. There is music. There are animals. There are young women watching, which makes young men much less sensible. A wrestling ring is made by the crowd. Two men step forward. One is broad and confident. The other is smaller, which causes spectators to murmur, because people love a mismatch almost as much as they love pretending to disapprove of one. They grip. At first, nothing happens. This is the boring part for those who do not understand wrestling. The feet shift, the hands test, the shoulders press. Each man feels the other's weight. Then, suddenly, everything happens. A twist, a step, a hip, a lift. A body hits the ground. The crowd shouts. The fallen man lies still for 1 second too long, then rises quickly to prove the fall did not matter. It mattered. He will feel it tomorrow. Village wrestling could be honorable. It could also become a fight. The line between wrestling and fighting is thin if one man feels humiliated, if money is wagered, if ale has been consumed, or if the winner smiles too long at the loser's sweetheart. That last condition is historically serious. Many public games in the Middle Ages were also courtship theaters. Young men displayed strength. Young women watched. Older people pretended not to notice. Everyone noticed. A wrestling victory could make a man attractive. A wrestling defeat could make him angry. Anger plus ale plus, an audience gives history a great deal to work with. Now let us look at cudgel play. A cudgel is a stick, and a stick is one of humanity's most reliable bad ideas. Cudgel play, quarterstaff contests, single stick, and related stick fighting practices appear in different forms across Europe and later periods, with roots in older martial and festive traditions. In villages and fairs, men might compete by striking each other with sticks under local rules. Some contests were training. Some were sport. Some were basically fighting with enough structure to let everyone pretend it was not just fighting. A stick is cheap. A stick is available. A stick gives reach. A stick makes a satisfying sound against another stick. A stick also makes a very different sound against a skull. This is the problem. Imagine a feast day field. Two men face each other with cudgels. They circle. The crowd forms a rough ring. Someone says the rules. Do not strike there. Stop after blood. Only above the waist, or some local variation. Everyone nods. Within 30 seconds, someone forgets. The first blow lands on a shoulder. The second is blocked. The third catches fingers. The fourth glances off the side of the head. The crowd roars. Blood appears. Now the question is whether the contest ends, or whether pride has taken over and the rules have become decorative. This is why stick games were dangerous. They were exciting because they simulated combat. They were dangerous because they simulated combat with actual sticks. A good player was fast, controlled, and brave. A bad player was wild. A drunk player was worse. A humiliated player was worst. The line between game and assault could vanish in one swing. Yet cudgel play had value. It trained the body. It taught timing. It taught distance. It built courage. It prepared men for violence in a world where violence might arrive through war, robbery, feud, riot, or personal quarrel. The village did not draw a clean line between sport and martial preparation. A game could be a rehearsal. A rehearsal could become a fight. A fight could later be described as a game, if that made the court case easier. Now let us talk about archery, which seems more disciplined. Archery was not a village sport in the same chaotic way as football, but it was practiced widely and could be competitive. In England especially, archery had military importance. Laws and customs encouraged or required practice. The longbow became central to English warfare in the later Middle Ages, and skill with the bow did not appear magically on the battlefield. It was built through repeated practice. Archery contests could be dangerous, though usually more controlled than mob games. An arrow is not a toy. A poorly managed practice field can kill. An overconfident boy can injure someone. A drunk man with a bow is a problem best solved by removing either the bow or the man. Imagine men practicing at butts, the earthen targets used for archery. They stand in a line. They shoot. Arrows strike. Some fall short. Some go wide. People retrieve them. This requires discipline. It also requires nobody to wander in front at the wrong moment. Archery had the approval of authorities in a way football often did not. The same young men who might be banned from mob football were encouraged to practice the bow. That tells us something important. Authorities were not against danger. They were against unproductive danger. An arrow in the service of the king was useful. A broken window from football was disorder. A bruised shoulder from archery practice was regrettable. A bruised alderman from a football mob was a civic problem. The difference was not safety. It was control. Now let us consider stone throwing. Throwing heavy objects for distance, strength, or accuracy appears in many rural traditions. Stones were everywhere. So were young men eager to prove strength with whatever was lying around. A stone throwing contest could be simple. Who throws farthest? Who hits a mark? Who can lift and cast the largest stone? This sounds harmless compared with sticks and football mobs. It is not. A thrown stone has no conscience. Imagine a village green. A large stone is selected. The first man lifts and throws. The crowd marks the landing. The second throws farther. The third strains too hard and injures his back. The fourth releases badly. The stone bounces. People move too late. Someone's foot is crushed. Everyone agrees he should not have been standing there. He agrees loudly that everyone else should not have been throwing stones. Stone throwing reveals a common pattern in village games. The equipment is ordinary. The setting is familiar. The danger is obvious only after it has happened. And because the game proves strength, men who should stop often continue. A sore shoulder becomes a torn shoulder. A strained back becomes a lasting injury. A stone meant to land in a field lands in a person. Yet stone throwing persisted because strength mattered. Rural life demanded lifting, carrying, digging, hauling, cutting, and enduring. A strong body was useful. A public test of strength confirmed reputation. And reputation in a village was almost a second body. One carried it everywhere. Now, let us move to throwing games with iron, wood, or other heavy objects. In some regions and later traditions, hammer throwing, cobber-like lifting, or other strength games emerged from practical objects and martial training. For the Middle Ages, we must be cautious about drawing straight lines from later Highland games or festival games backward too neatly. But the general habit is clear enough. People turned tools, stones, sticks, and work skills into contests. Can you throw farther, lift more, strike harder, run faster, stand longer? The village had few separate arenas for sport, so ordinary objects became sporting objects. A staff becomes a weapon. A stone becomes a test. A ball becomes a riot. A rooster becomes, unfortunately, a target. Now we must talk about animal sports. This is not the gentlest part of the subject. Cockfighting was known and popular in various parts of Europe over long periods. Two roosters were set against one another, often with betting. Authorities sometimes condemned such games, but they remained part of popular culture. There were also cruel customs, such as cock throwing in later periods, where birds were targeted in festival games. Some forms are better documented after the Middle Ages, so we should avoid pretending every later custom was fully formed in the earlier period. Still, animal cruelty as entertainment existed, and cockfighting has deep roots. A cockfight is violent in a different way from football. Human body may remain uninjured. The animal body does not. Men gather. Money changes hands. Birds are handled, provoked, set down. They fight. The crowd leans in. There is shouting, wagers, accusations of cheating. Because wherever there is betting, there is suspicion. The danger to humans comes not only from the animals, but from the men watching. A disputed cockfight can become a human fight. One man says the bird was unfairly prepared. Another says he is a liar. A third says the money is his. A fourth says no, it is not. Now the cockfight has done what many games do. It has created a socially acceptable path from boredom to violence. Animal sports also tell us that entertainment in the Middle Ages was not always kind. People lived close to animal death. They slaughtered animals, hunted animals, worked animals, and used animal bodies constantly. That closeness did not automatically produce tenderness. Sometimes it produced practicality, sometimes cruelty, sometimes both in the same person. Now let us discuss hunting, though carefully. Hunting was more associated with elites than village sport, especially larger game such as deer and boar, which were often protected by forest law. But villagers might participate in beating, driving, poaching, trapping, or local hunting of smaller animals. Boar hunting in particular was dangerous, though more aristocratic than village-based in many areas. A boar is not a decorative pig. It is a compact argument with tusks. Hunting one with spears and dogs can end badly. A boar can cut a dog open. A horse can panic. A man can be gored. Noble hunting had rules, ceremony, and status, but it remained dangerous because animals do not care about heraldry. For villagers, unauthorized hunting could be dangerous in legal terms as much as physical ones. Poaching in a lord's forest might lead to severe penalties. A man hunting where he should not was playing a dangerous game with authority. So if we include hunting among violent sports, we should note that it was not village sport in the same communal sense as football. It was status, subsistence, crime, training, and pleasure, depending on who did it and where. Now let us return to village ball games, because they are the heart of the subject. The most dangerous feature of these games was not simply that they were rough. It was that they were communal. A private wrestling match can be stopped. A mob game becomes a creature. Once hundreds of people are pushing toward the same goal, individual intention matters less. A man who would never strike his neighbor in cold blood may shove him hard in the crowd. A man who would never break a shop shutter may crash into it because the ball is there and so is everyone else. A normally sensible person becomes part of a moving mass, and a moving mass has terrible judgment. The crowd transforms responsibility. Who broke the fence? Everyone. Who pushed the baker into the ditch? Hard to say. Who started the fight? Depends which parish you ask. Who owns the damage? This question often arrives after the game, when the excitement has gone and property remains broken. That is why officials disliked these games. Not because officials lacked fun, though some surely did, but because disorder creates paperwork, and paperwork is the natural enemy of festival joy. Imagine the morning after. The village is quieter. The injured are being counted informally. One man has a swollen eye. Another has a split lip. Another claims he cannot hear properly in one ear. One woman discovers her fence broken. A cart axle is damaged. A pig escaped during the commotion and has not yet been found. The priest is displeased because mud was tracked too close to the church. The reeve is already tired. The men who played are proud. The people who suffered the damage are not. This is the cost of violent play. The story lasts. So do the repairs. Now let us look at why these games happened around feast days. calendar of the Middle Ages was structured by the church year, agricultural labor, market rhythms, and local custom. There were times of intense work and times of relative release. Before Lent, people feasted, played, drank, and used up foods that would soon be restricted. Shrovetide became a season of disorder in many places, with games, disguises, noise, and public release. This matters. Violent games were not random weekend hobbies. They often belonged to ritual time. Before fasting, excess. Before discipline, chaos. Before spring labor, one last winter game. The body needed release. The community needed a pressure valve. That does not mean the authorities approved. It means the games served a function even while causing trouble. A village that works together also needs ways to compete. A neighboring parish is useful for marriage, trade, and insults. A ball game gives the insult structure. For one day, rivalry becomes legal enough. The next day, perhaps everyone returns to boundaries, rents, and ordinary resentment. Now imagine married men against unmarried men. This kind of division appears in some traditional games. It is socially perfect. On one side, men who have households, wives, children, responsibilities, and a strong need to show they are not yet soft. On the other, unmarried young men with too much energy, not enough property, and a strong need to show they are worth marrying or fearing. The ball is thrown. The married men push with experience and weight. The unmarried men run with speed and recklessness. The married men complain that the young ones do not respect custom. The young ones complain that the married ones cheat. Both are probably correct. A young man breaks through with the ball. A married man tackles him from behind. The young man says this is unfair. The married man says this is education. The crowd enjoys all of it. Behind the humor is social sorting. Who is strong? Who is brave? Who is quick? Who panics? Who helps a fallen neighbor? Who hits after the play has moved on? The game reveals character, or at least lets people pretend it does. Now let us talk about women in these games. In many rough village sports, men dominated the play, especially in the most violent forms. But women were not absent. They watched, judged, shouted, mocked, praised, wagered, treated injuries, complained about damage, and carried memory. In some local customs, women may have participated in certain games, races, dances, or contests, depending on place and time. Even when not playing, women mattered. A young man's performance was public. A woman's opinion could make or ruin the glory of it. A wife could later inform her husband that he looked ridiculous falling into the stream. A mother could tell a son he was lucky his nose was not broken. A sweetheart could pretend not to be impressed, which is often more effective than being impressed. Women also suffered the practical consequences. A husband injured in play might be unable to work. A son might need care. A fence might need mending. Clothing might be torn, shoes might be lost. The village game was public fun with domestic cleanup. History should never forget who washed the mud out. Now let us consider children. Children watched these games and learned. They learned the roots, the teams, the insults, the old stories. They learned which men were admired. They learned which families had grudges. They learned where to stand if they wanted to see and not be flattened. They also played their own versions: small ball games, stick games, wrestling, throwing, running, mimicking the adults. A boy kicking a bladder in a lane might someday join the Shrovetide mob. A girl watching from a wall might remember exactly who cheated. Children are the storage system of custom. They see the game before they understand it. Later, they insist it has always been done this way. This is how dangerous traditions survive. Now, let us move toward winter games on ice. In colder regions, people played and traveled on frozen water. Skating in the Middle Ages is known in parts of Northern Europe, with bone skates and gliding on ice. Sliding and skating might be sport, travel, or mischief. Add speed, hard ice, sharp sticks, and questionable judgment, and danger follows. Imagine a frozen pond. The ice seems thick enough. That phrase has ruined many days. Young people gather. Some have skates made from bones strapped to shoes. Others slide. Sticks are used for balance or propulsion. A boy moves too fast, falls, hits his head. Another cracks through thin ice near the edge and is pulled out soaked and terrified. An older man says he told them. He did. No one listened. Ice games are dangerous because the surface itself participates. The ground is not ground. It is temporary permission. Beneath it is water, cold and indifferent. In village life, ice could be useful and joyful. It could also kill. A winter sport required not only courage, but judgment. Judging ice is an old skill. Overconfidence is older. Now let us talk about running races. A race sounds harmless. Compared with cudgels and mob football, it is practically civilized. But the Middle Ages did not offer clean tracks. A race might happen across fields, streets, hills, muddy lanes, or festival spaces. Bare feet, poor shoes, uneven ground, stones, ruts, livestock, dogs, and cheering crowds all make running more interesting than safe. Races could be part of fairs and festivals. Men ran for prizes. Boys ran for pride. Sometimes women ran in festival games too, though customs varied. Prizes might include food, cloth, drink, or simply reputation. The injuries were familiar: twisted ankles, falls, cuts, collisions, vomiting after too much ale. A man who wins a race may become a local hero for the afternoon. A man who trips at the start may become a story for years. Village sport is merciless because witnesses are neighbors. A stranger forgets. A village remembers. Now let us consider swimming. Swimming was known, though not everyone could do it. Rivers, ponds, and streams were part of daily life. Young men might compete in crossing water, diving, or rough play. This could be dangerous, especially in cold water, floods, mill races, and places with strong currents. A swimming contest in a river may look like harmless boasting until one man tires, or cramps, or is swept near the mill, or strikes a hidden branch, or jumps into water shallower than expected. There is no lifeguard. There is only panic, shouting, and the strongest swimmer trying not to become a second victim. Water games were dangerous because water does not care whether a contest began as a joke. In many village settings, rivers were workplaces, washing places, fishing places, transport routes, and hazards. To play in them was natural. To die in them was not rare. Now, let us return to stick and ball games across Europe. There were many local variants: hurling, shinty-like games, bandy-like games on ice, hockey-like games, soul with sticks, camp ball, and other traditional contests. We should be cautious about treating them all as the same sport, but they share a family resemblance. A ball, a stick or foot, teams, local rules, large spaces, physical contact, public excitement, high risk of somebody being hit in the head. Such games trained useful abilities: speed, endurance, coordination, courage, and teamwork. They also trained people to tolerate impact. In societies where physical toughness had real value, this mattered. But every training game is a negotiation with injury. A man who becomes strong through sport may also become lame through sport. A game that builds community may also deepen rivalries. A stick swung for the ball may become a weapon when anger arrives. This is why authorities alternated between tolerating and suppressing such games. They could see the energy. They could also see the broken shutters. Now let us consider the role of ale. Ale belongs in this story. It is not the entire cause of violent sports, but it is often nearby. Feast days involved drinking. Markets involved drinking. Wrestling contests, football games, cockfights, and fairs often took place in social environments where alehouses did good business. A little ale warms, more ale loosens. Too much ale turns rules into suggestions. A man who would stop after a fair tackle, when sober may not stop after 3 cups. A man who loses gracefully at noon may demand another match by evening. A man whose rooster loses money may decide the problem was not the rooster, but the opponent's face. Ale did not create violence. It removed some of the small fences that keep violence waiting. In the Middle Ages, as now, public games plus alcohol plus pride could produce injuries not officially part of the sport. The match ends. The fight begins at the alehouse. The court later hears both described separately, though everyone knows they belong to the same afternoon. Now let us walk through a village after several rough sports have taken place at a fair. The wrestling ground is churned. A stick fighting contest has left bits of broken wood near the hedge. The football crowd has flattened grass near the churchyard. A boy is still looking for a lost cap. Someone is drunk beside a cart. A rooster has died for reasons that do not flatter humanity. The alehouse is full. A woman is telling her husband that his shoulder will be useless tomorrow, and she hopes the victory was worth it. He says it was. By morning, he will revise. This is the aftermath of violent play. Pain arrives late. Adrenaline leaves. Pride remains, then stiffens. Men wake with bruises they do not remember earning. A mother sees her son's split lip and says nothing for one long moment, which is worse than shouting. The priest prepares a sermon about disorder, vanity, and the flesh. No one needs to ask what inspired it. Now let us talk about bans. Bans are very useful to historians because they reveal what people kept doing. If a king, mayor, bishop, or local authority bans something repeatedly, it suggests that the thing did not vanish after the First Order. Medieval football and related games were banned again and again in different places. This was not because nobody liked them. It was because too many people liked them too much. A ban says, "Stop doing this." The next ban says, "We noticed you did not stop." The next says, "Seriously." The next says, "Imprisonment." The game continues. This is the rhythm of popular culture and authority. Authorities want order. People want custom. Authorities issue rules. People wait until the feast day and produce a ball. We should not romanticize this too much. Authorities sometimes had good reasons. People were injured. Property was damaged. Work was disrupted. Violence spilled into places that did not consent to it. But neither should we imagine the players as merely foolish. These games carried community memory. They linked generations. They marked time. They gave young people a place to be seen. They let villages compete without formal war, at least ideally. Danger does not prevent meaning. Sometimes danger creates meaning. Now let us return to the most dangerous game, mob football, and follow a full match from beginning to end. The day is cold. It is before Lent. The village has eaten well. There has been ale. A butcher has provided the bladder, perhaps, or someone has brought out the old ball. The ball is inspected as if it were a sacred object, though it has none of the dignity and all of the smell of something that has been stored badly. Two sides gather, upper village and lower village. The upper side includes the miller's sons, two brothers known for fighting at weddings, a very fast young man named Peter, and an older man called Matthew who should not play but always does. The lower side includes a blacksmith's apprentice, several farmhands, a widower with alarming stamina, and a short man nobody notices until he has the ball. The crowd forms. A local person of some standing may begin the game, or the ball may simply be thrown. The opening surge is immediate. Peter from the upper village catches it and runs. The crowd screams. He slips because glory rarely checks the mud. The short man from the lower village grabs the ball. He vanishes under bodies. No one can see him. The mass moves toward the lane. The ball emerges from the side. Now Matthew, the older man, has it. Everyone shouts for him to stop because he is running toward a cart. He does not stop. The cart stops him. There is a sound. Matthew falls. The ball moves on. Matthew remains sitting, blinking, and then announces he is perfectly well. He is not. The game turns toward the church wall. This is bad. Several women shout that the wall is not part of the game. Several men shout that everything is part of the game. This difference of opinion is traditional. The ball is shoved away from the wall just in time. A man hits his head on a low branch. A child cheers. The child's mother pulls him back by the collar. The ball moves into the field. Now the game stretches. Some men sprint, some jog. Some pretend they are waiting strategically, though actually they are winded. The ball is carried, kicked, dropped, retrieved, hidden briefly under someone's tunic, discovered, fought over, and pushed toward the stream. A fight begins behind the main play. This is also traditional. Two men argue over whether one struck the other unfairly. Both have been striking everyone unfairly for an hour, so the moral claim is thin. Friends separate them. They return to the game and immediately strike each other again within legal enthusiasm. The ball enters the stream. The stream receives it without permission. Men plunge in. Mud rises. A shoe is lost. Someone's hood tears. The ball is carried up the opposite bank. Peter, now redeemed from his earlier fall, takes it and runs toward the goal. The lower village closes in. The blacksmith's apprentice tackles him so hard that both slide several yards. The ball slips loose. A farmhand kicks it forward. The short man appears again. No one understands how. He takes the ball the final distance. The lower village wins, or claims to. The upper village disputes the exact placement. The lower village says the goal was obvious. The upper village says it was not properly reached. An old man says in his day the goal was farther east. Everyone ignores him because old men move goals backward through memory. The argument lasts longer than the play. Eventually, the lower village is treated as winner, not because the matter is settled, but because everyone is too tired to continue. The wounded are gathered. Matthew is helped home. Peter limps. The blacksmith's apprentice cannot lift one arm. The short man is suddenly beloved. Several fences require attention. The stream bank is a disgrace. The priest has notes for Sunday. This is village sport. This is danger wrapped in custom. Now, let us compare it to modern sport. Modern sport often separates play from ordinary life. There is a field, a schedule, a referee, a league, a registration form, a rule book. Spectators stand apart. Players wear designated clothes. The game begins and ends within controlled boundaries. In the village games of the Middle Ages, boundaries were often less controlled. The village itself could become the field. The spectators might become participants. The street might become the route. Property might become an obstacle. An old quarrel might become part of the play. A local rivalry might become the true score. This makes the games feel wild to us. But to the players, they were not necessarily lawless. They had customs, meanings, expected routes, and inherited forms. They were not modern, but they were not meaningless. The danger came from the overlap between play and life. You could not always tell where one ended and the other began. Now let us think about why such games appeal for a sleep channel. At first, they seem too exciting, too loud, too violent, too full of people falling into water. But the deeper history is repetitive and soothing in its own strange way. Every year, the same day comes. The same ball appears. The same sides gather. The same lanes fill. The same warnings are ignored. The same men claim they are not too old. The same boys watch from unsafe places. The same priest disapproves. The same mud wins. This repetition is almost ceremonial. The violence has rhythm. Run, fall, shout, push, lose the ball, find the ball, cross the stream, argue, limp home. Again next year. A village could measure time by such customs. The year was not only sowing, harvest, rent, and feast. It was also the day of the game. The day Matthew fell into the cart. The year Peter ran all the way to the stream. The year the lower village cheated. The year the upper village cheated first. The year the ball went through the baker's window. The year no one was badly hurt, which everyone agreed made the game somewhat disappointing. Now let us return to hurling for another quiet moment. A stick handball game has a different music. The crack of wood, the slap of feet, the shout for the ball, the rush of players. The hard little ball moving faster than caution. A man raises his stick. A defender closes. The ball is struck. It flies. Someone catches, blocks, or simply gets hit. There is skill here, not just violence. Old village sports are sometimes described as chaos because written observers often disliked them. But players knew technique. A good hurler, wrestler, archer, or cudgel player trained the body. Timing, balance, and courage were admired because they were real. Violent sports were not merely outlets for stupidity. They were also schools of movement. Very painful schools, but schools nonetheless. A boy learns how to dodge, how to grip, how to fall, how to read another body, how to endure, how to stand up before the crowd thinks he is finished. These lessons might serve him in work, courtship, rivalry, travel, or war. Village play and adult life were not separate. Now let us think about the church. The church sometimes condemned violent games, gambling, cruelty, disorder, drunkenness, and feast day excess. Yet the same games often happened near the church calendar. Shrovetide, feast days, saints' days, and parish gatherings made the crowd possible. This creates a familiar tension. The church provides the rhythm. The people provide the uproar. The priest wants devotion. The parishioners bring a ball. A feast day can begin with Mass and end with 3 men in a ditch. This does not mean people were irreligious. They might attend Mass sincerely and then play violently afterward. Human beings are capable of many modes in one day. The Middle Ages were full of such contradictions: devotion and disorder, fasting and feasting, prayer and wrestling, confession and cockfighting. A man might ask forgiveness for anger, then become angry because another man fouled him in the game after supper. This is not hypocrisy so much as humanity operating on schedule. Now let us consider class. Noble sports in the Middle Ages included hunting, hawking, jousting, tournaments, riding, and formal martial training. Village sports were rougher, cheaper, and more communal. But the divide was not absolute. Wrestling, archery, running, and ball games could cross social boundaries in different forms. Elite tournaments could be as dangerous as village football, sometimes more so, but they were wrapped in heraldry, status, and ceremony. A peasant breaking a rib in a football mob is disorder. A knight breaking a rib in a tournament is chivalry. This is partly a matter of costume. It is also a matter of power. The village game may be banned for public order. The noble tournament may be celebrated, regulated, or also banned at times when rulers feared private warfare. Violence with noble sponsorship often looks more respectable. Violence with muddy villagers looks like trouble, but the body does not care about status. A broken collarbone is democratic. Now let us walk through the list of dangerous village sports one more time, slowly. Mob football, the great crowd game. Danger from crushing, falls, drowning, blows, property damage, and the transformation of local rivalry into moving chaos. La Soul, the French cousin of rough football. Danger from enormous playing spaces, sticks, ditches, streams, village rivalry, and the delightful absence of modern boundaries. Hurling and related stick handball games. Danger from speed, hard balls, swinging sticks, collisions, and the human skull's poor design for sport. Wrestling. Danger from throws, pride, wagers, courtship, ale, and the fact that the ground is always harder than expected. Cudgel play. Danger from sticks, timing, anger, head injuries, broken fingers, and rules that become less persuasive after blood appears. Archery contests. Danger from arrows, poor discipline, and the difference between useful military practice and accidental manslaughter, stone throwing and strength games, danger from crushed feet, strained backs, bad throws, and young men believing the body is a renewable object, cockfighting and animal contests, danger to animals first, then to humans once wagers and insults begin, ice games and winter sliding, danger from hard falls, hidden water, thin ice, and the ancient phrase, "it will hold," swimming and water contests, danger from cold, current, pride, and the river's total indifference to applause. Together, these games show a world where play was physical, local, seasonal, and often close to harm. Now let us settle into one final village evening. The games are over. The light is fading. Mud dries on boots. Ale cups are emptied. The ball is put away if it has survived. The sticks are stacked. A rooster is buried or cooked, depending on the level of sentiment in the community. A mother washes blood from her son's forehead. A wife wraps her husband's wrist and tells him he is not young. He says he did well. She says he fell over a sheep. He says that was tactical. She does not answer. In another house, a young man lies awake, replaying the moment he nearly scored. He will tell the story tomorrow with improvements. An older man sits by the fire with a sore hip and says the games used to be rougher. Everyone knows this is false, but no one has the strength to debate him. The priest writes a sermon in his head. The reeve wonders who will repair the fence. The baker counts broken boards. The village slowly quiets. The field is churned. The ditch bank is damaged. The stream still carries a little mud from the crossing. One shoe remains in the reeds. The moon rises. The game has ended, but the village has been changed slightly. A new story has entered the place. Next year, someone will say, "Remember when Matthew hit the cart?" Someone else will say, "Remember when Peter dropped the ball?" Someone else will say, "Remember when the lower village cheated?" Then the ball will appear again. The crowd will gather. The authorities will sigh. The young men will pretend not to be afraid. The older men will pretend not to be old. The women will watch from the best positions. The children will climb where they should not. The ball will rise. The bodies will surge. And the dangerous games of the Middle Ages will begin again. Not because they are safe. Not because they are wise. Not because everyone approves. But because people have always needed ways to test the body, mark the season, challenge the neighbor, impress the village, and turn ordinary streets into a temporary field of noise, mud, pride, pain, and memory. That is the old history of sport. Before stadiums, before rule books, before referees, before anyone thought to separate public recreation from property damage. A ball in the mud, a stick in the hand, a crowd in motion, a shout near the church wall, a man falling into cold water and rising as if he meant to, a village laughing, arguing, limping, remembering, and then eventually sleeping. For now, the game is over. The doors are closed. The bruises are blooming. The stream is quiet. The field is empty. The ball waits in the dark. And somewhere in the village, a boy who watched everything is dreaming of the day he will be foolish enough to play.